America's big cities are facing major problems.
From sky-high interest rates to the reluctance of employees to return to their office.
The impact of higher rates and the banking stress is hurting smaller businesses across the country.
Many of which can be summed up by a controversial new phrase, the urban doom loop.
The environment is certainly shifting on Main Street, and it's weighing on optimism.
Losses at the bank level, right? There's going to be losses at the investors level. And I think for the cities, right, they're going to have this potential, this urban doom loop.
Columbia Business School professor Stan Van Nieuwerburg coined the term. Here's how it all works.
Early in the pandemic, a lot of office sector workers started working from home. And here we are 3 years later, many of them are still working from home at least some of the time. All of that has led to a large reduction in the demand for office. We see a lot of companies downsizing. We see a lot of companies not renewing their leases at all and consolidating. And with this demand decline for office comes declines in the revenues for the owners of those offices and value declines in these offices. Declines in property values reduce property tax revenues for the city. The cities have to balance their budget. They now need to cut spending. That means less money for public safety, for sanitation, for transportation, for education. Makes the city a less attractive place to live. People migrate out, property values fall more, less money, more people moving out, and the city gets into an urban doom loop where its fiscal health spirals down.
At the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, remote work policies prompted many employees to leave their city and move to new states. These population outflows have long-term implications for cities, which rely on tax revenues for funding.
Property tax revenue in New York City is about half of all tax revenue. Commercial property tax revenue is about 10% of all tax revenue. So if the value of that falls by 40%, we're talking about a 4% hole in the budget. So if New York City's budget is $100 billion per year, that's a $4 billion shortfall that has to be made up somewhere else. Rich people pay a disproportionate share of income taxes. In New York, for example, a few thousand taxpayers are paying half of all taxes. Migration has become easier because you can leave the city without leaving your job. So if a few rich people or families leave, that could leave a large hole in the budget. The technology sector has been more permissive to remote work, and so those cities tend to be affected the most. Think of places like San Francisco, Seattle, West Coast cities sort of more generally.
The urban doom loop isn't just a theory. It's playing out in the real world, with landlords finding themselves financially underwater and regional banks facing a credit crunch.
Hi, it's Tisha Paul and welcome to American Television News. Go ahead, friends and folks and family and everyone that's watching, hit the free like and that free subscribe button. It helps a lot. Our team really needs this, so please hit the like and free subscribe. So you're just watching a segment on CNBC and we're talking about the real estate market, how commercial real estate market is dying. And I'm about to tell you, is it a good time to buy residential real estate in the United States? I'm going to answer that question in 6 minutes, but let's go over some data together. So, interest rate is at 8%. The average home is at $391,600. Yes, it's a good time to buy real estate because according to the data, real estate is going to be going higher, not lower. So let's read the data together so you can see what I'm talking about. So let's see what the first data is saying. And my son's coming out from today. If you read the new single family houses, 1,000 seasonal adjustment, it just popped up on your screen. Did you notice something? You notice that data? In 2012, 2013, it dropped. It's back on its way up. Now, use U.S. Treasury rates in 2022. If you read this data, 12/30/2022, interest rate was at 3.97. So that's 2022. The change is about 2.07%. What about existing home sales? They dropped relentlessly. So the percentage in 2014, existing home sales fell by 5%, as if we can afford that. And then in 2018 and 2019, existing home sales fell again by 5%. That means there are less homes on the market for sale. Why are there less homes on the market for sale? Three things. America owes $33 trillion. So everybody, Wall Street is running to hedge itself against this thing called inflation. Also, the fact that America owes $33 trillion means they're never going to get out of it. So housing are going to continue to go up not down. Since Wall Street owns a lot of the single family homes in the United States, some people are projecting at 70%, or in 2030 they'll own 70% of it. Housing is going up, not down. 70% of the homeowners in the United States have a loan with 4% interest or lower. Why would they sell? Let's use our common sense here. If you have an interest rate of 4%, why would you sell to get an interest rate of 8%? Remember, you have to put one in the market to get one. Most people sell to go higher or sell to go lower. But with interest rate the way they are, they're staying put. So that's another issue. So we look at the annual 10-year Treasury maturity rate from 1962 to 2021. Look at that, baby. Look at that. 1992, 14%. 2018, we're at 2%. Do you see why so many people flocked to the market in 2020 to buy real estate? It's just crazy when you give interest rate at 2%. Let's look at the US existing home sales. So we look at the one in purple, it says 2022. We see that existing home sales, they were between 300 to 400. But look at 2021, there was about 600 of them for sale. But by the time 2022 come around, there's half of that for sale now. What happened? Well, homeowners found Airbnb, that's number one. Number two, Wall Street found it. And number three, 70% of the homeowners have 4% or less. So when we think about existing home sales, according to CNBC, we know that the average interest rate is 7.61%. And that's if you have a home that's 726,200 or less with a 30-year fix. The application, according to CNBC, for refinance increased by 2%. That is 7% higher than it was a year ago. That means homeowners are not selling. They're staying put. They're refinancing and figuring out something else to do. Home sales fell to 13-year low in October as prices rise. So October had 14.6, lower than October 2020. What is also causing this? Big government. President Joe Biden, President Obama, Senator Elizabeth Warren, AOC, Bernie Sanders, we have Jerome Powell, Gary Gensler. All these people are just in the housing market and they're doing something that's making it worse for us to buy. Jerome Powell does not stop raising the interest rate. And he's saying, oh, I'm bringing down the inflation. It's hurting the housing market. Gary Gensler suing XRP. That didn't help us. Or Coinbase. That doesn't help us. That scared people away from crypto and they're running to the housing market to protect themselves. Elizabeth Warren going after the banks. That doesn't help. President Joe Biden shutting down Silicon Valley Bank. That didn't help. Where can you find homes today to buy? Here are the three places I'm saying to look at. First of all, don't look at a home. Look at a townhome.